Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about Oxygen. Before I begin this review, I just want to preface things by saying that this video is going to be more on the shorter side of things and it's going to be strictly non-spoilers. The reason why I've chosen to do the review in this way is because there are huge plot details that are uncovered in this movie's story about halfway through, and I feel that I wouldn't be able to talk about the movie at length without bringing up those extra details, so I'm going to try and keep this review on the shorter side of things. The plot of Oxygen revolves around a woman trapped in a cryogenic pod who wakes up out of stasis and quickly finds out that her oxygen supply is dwindling thanks to the help of the AI on board named Milo. Aside from being stuck in one place and with nowhere to go and her air supply slowly running out, she also doesn't have any memory of who she was before she entered the pod in the first place, so it's up to her and Milo to piece together the mystery using memories that pop up in her head from time to time in the movie, as well as little bits of plot details that occur naturally throughout the story. The movie reminded me a lot about the Ryan Reynolds movie Barry, just in the sense that it takes place in one setting throughout the majority of the story, though unlike that film, thanks to this one's science fiction setting, it ends up feeling just a little bit less claustrophobic. Due to the nature of this movie's story, there's not many characters to pick away from. There's only 3 that I can recall off the top of my head, and 2 of them are the main characters. The first of them being the woman, who's played by Melanie Laurent, and the second is the AI partner, who's performed by Mathieu Amalric. I thought Melanie Laurent was fantastic in this movie. I can't imagine it's easy to be able to perform by yourself throughout the entire movie, or at least pretending to be with someone else in the sense that you have to pretend to have a conversation with an AI that's not really there, but as far as this movie's concerned, she absolutely nailed it. I think she must have ran through the 5 stages of grief at least 3 times watching this movie. There's a lot of scenes where her character is constantly bargaining with Milo and she's trying to get any information that she can to figure out why she's in the pod to begin with, but due to his programming, he's unable to fully answer all of her questions, and this drives her crazy. We see her run through the entire gamut of emotions that one could possibly experience while being in a terrifying situation such as that, and again, I thought Melanie's performance was just phenomenal, especially whenever she's treating Milo as an antagonist of sorts, and she manages to find some crafty way to avoid one of Milo's mandatory medical procedures. I just couldn't stop giggling whenever moments like that happened. Mathieu Amalric's performance as Milo was also great. His calm, robotic demeanor definitely complemented the woman's panicked persona to a T. He starts off as being an antagonist of sorts, but as the story develops, you come to understand why Milo is the way he, or it, is, and you end up hoping along with the woman that he's able to find a solution to all of her problems. I'm not gonna lie though, some of the most intense scenes in this movie involved Milo trying to carry out his medical programming, and it was really creepy just to see the lengths that he would go to try and sedate the woman through any means necessary. He also ends up being a great source of comedy relief at times. There's a running gag throughout the movie whenever the woman is trying to pry herself out of the cryopod, and Milo constantly reminds her that what she's doing is a felony offense, to which he often responds by melding him off. I love the dynamic that occurred between those two at times. Due to the fact that this movie takes place in one setting throughout the entire movie, it's understandable to think that one might get easily bored while watching it. However, for me personally, I didn't really find the movie all that boring. In fact, quite the opposite. I thought that its claustrophobic setting really added to the thrills of this movie's story. There's a great variety of suspenseful scenes that are present throughout this movie, especially like the ones I've already mentioned where Milo's trying to carry out his medical programming and the woman does everything in her power to try and avoid getting injected. I think what really helps this movie stand out in terms of presentation is how Milo's interface is used throughout the movie. He's able to perform a number of useful functions such as making telephone calls, surfing on the internet for clues, and even doing simple things like trying to calm down the woman whenever she's having a panic attack. There's a great mystery narrative present throughout this movie where the woman is trying to recover her identity using as much assistance from Milo as she can, and looking back on it now, I think that was the thing that kept me invested in watching this movie to the end. However, as entertained and invested as I was with the woman trying to figure out who she was, I thought that there were some flaws with its overall design. For example, I thought it was weird that the woman was able to recall really oddly specific details that no one in their right mind would ever pay attention to in the real world. She has these memories of her husband, or at least a man that she believes is her husband, and there's one aspect of that whole angle where she's trying to recall a specific memory related to her husband, and just the way it all happened I felt was way off base. Also, as I alluded to at the beginning of this review, there are a couple really big plot twists that happen in this story. One of them occurs pretty early into the movie, too. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about them in depth for the sake of avoiding spoilers, but they may or may not be a factor in your overall enjoyment of this movie. For me personally, I wasn't all that bothered by the plot twists in this movie. I like how they all related to the human side of science fiction. And if that doesn't make sense the way I say it, picture an average science fiction movie that you'd go to see in the theaters today. In most cases, it would be almost completely, if not fully and completely, focused on special effects and just how the overall movie looks in general. In this movie, however, there's not a whole lot to look at, although what's there is beautiful, but what's more important is the moral dilemmas and ethical questions that it raises with regards to the content that keeps getting brought up throughout the story. I just really enjoyed how this movie showed the advancement of the human race through technological means and all the sacrifices and moral dilemmas that we have to overcome in order to do so. This being said, however, I completely understand why someone might not be a fan of a movie whose story does a complete 180, especially when this one does it more than once. So if you're not a fan of that sort of thing, you may want to stay away from this movie and look elsewhere. Overall though, I thought Oxygen was a fantastic thriller. It's definitely not perfect by any means, but it still entertained me regardless, and it's another great film to add to Alexander Aja's catalog. If you enjoy watching thriller movies, especially ones that have mystery elements behind them, and you don't mind a story that's set in one place the entire time, this movie is definitely for you. While it takes some strange turns with its story, the performances of the actors more than made it up for me, and the overall thematic content of its narrative made it that much better. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of Oxygen. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the psychological thriller, The Woman in the Window. Bye bye!